So let's say that you have a town. There's a Christmas party in this town. You go to the Christmas party, and someone announces that they're serving fruitcake. You love fruitcake. You go up to get your fruitcake, and someone else says that they also like fruitcake. And you guys go, oh, we both like fruitcake. And you have this very, very long, deep conversation about all sorts of different topics, all sorts of different things that you're on the same wavelength about, and you go off and become friends. And maybe you start a club, and maybe you start writing fiction together and start reviewing each other's work and going to the same types of locations, and so on and so forth. Now, let's say you go to the Christmas party and someone announces that they're serving fruitcake, and the person next to you is like, I don't like fruitcake. Fruitcake is disgusting. And you don't really have anything in common, and you just sort of politely go your own way. Our genetics determines our temperament. It determines the way that we feel about certain things. A person with genes A is more likely to find sports interesting than someone with genes B, who is more likely to find books and intellectual topics interesting. Someone with genes A might be more boisterous and aggressive, whereas someone with genes B might be calmer, more sensitive. A might be messy and unhygienic. B might be clean and organized. So when you have a group of people who are genetically similar, you are more likely to find somebody with your temperament, or a temperament that is uncannily similar to your own. And this means that the weird autistic guy who's obsessed with roller coasters isn't an odd duck. He can find someone like himself. And so you have a thriving community where there's lots of empathy, where people don't overcharge for goods and services. They cut deals. They don't have you jump through so many hoops to get a job. And they can do this because they're just like them. They can trust them. They get them. But when you have diversity, everybody is a genetic stranger. Everybody is just a random assortment of genes. So everyone has a random temperament. And so you see less trust, less empathy, less fairness, less socializing. People stay inside because it's uncomfortable being around random people who you can't really trust, people who may be very stressful to be around. But something even worse happens when you have children. When two people of a different race, or even two people of the same race but from different countries, for example, a person from Sweden marrying a person from Ireland, what happens is that the child is so completely different from their parents that you have a less loving, less empathetic relationship. The child makes the parents angry. The child disappoints the parents. The child has nothing in common with the parents. The parents find the child boring. The child finds the parents boring. The child loses respect for the parents and the decisions that they make. The parents might spoil the child and project all sorts of idealistic nonsense onto them that you are my Eagle Scout. And obviously, the parents might have a favorite child. And this is very hard to hide. This isn't to excuse abusive relationships. It's just to point out the reality of having a genetic alien in your family as your offspring. It's going to be a lot harder to relate to them. You know, I grew up in a very Euro mixed family where you had German and Irish and Italian and English and Danish and Scottish and all these different things. My family completely imploded. My extended family is a basket case of warring, resentful, mentally ill people. They're transgender, or they have a drinking problem, or they're borderline, or they're psychopaths. And very few of them, almost none of them, are having children. They're all crashing out. And it's just constant fucking drama. I mean, they just don't fucking stop. And my parents literally had to move away from them. They literally had to go move out into the countryside to get away from them because they just wouldn't shut up. They just wouldn't get along. And while my parents were very earnest in trying to love us, that is, me and my sister, my sister crashed out. I ended up with a lot of problems. We didn't really have a good relationship with my mom. And while we did have a much better relationship with my dad, we weren't really that close. And it's like that with the children in all of our families. There's some sort of disconnect. There's some sort of lack of empathy. There's some sort of lack of in commonness. And so you have a cousin who, makes a bomb threat to his school. You have a cousin who breaks up with his girlfriend 25 times because he has an anxiety disorder, because his parents would constantly put him down, would constantly treat him like this annoying burden. And I mean, the problems just go on and on and on and on. Intergenerational resentment and neglect and distrust. And it just breaks my heart that this was all probably caused by the lack of genetic similarity. You just had random people having children. I mean, is it any wonder why so many mixed race people are attracted to white nationalism? I know it's kind of like, a joke that all white nationalists are really Mexicans. But you have to ask yourself, why are there so many of these guys who are like half black or a quarter Mexican or half Asian or Uzbekistani or whatever? Why are so many people like that attracted to this movement? And it's because they're lost. They don't feel a connection to anyone. They don't understand why they exist. And what happens is when you're alienated from your IRL environment, from your family, from your acquaintances, from your coworkers, and so on, when your coworkers are, a bunch of Indians who like to blast music in the lunchroom, who like to blast TikTok videos, where do you go to get some sort of connection? You go to the internet. And the crazy thing about the internet is that the more time you spend on there, the more likely you are to find someone who is almost a clone of you, someone who is just so eerily similar in so many ways that you can't put your finger on, that they must be long lost relatives, people from a very different branch of your family tree. And I think that's what happened to me. I think that I met lots of people who may not necessarily come from the same family or family tree, but in effect kind of are, just given the genes that they have. And so if you're watching this video, we might actually have more in common than you realize.